So welcome to all the viewers and listeners to Energy Tech Network on this fine June 16th afternoon. With us, we have Antoine, who's the Managing Director and Chief of Technology at Total Carbon Neutrality Ventures, where as part of their commitment to a better energy future, they focus on finding funding and fostering high potential startups, which will contribute to create a low carbon future. So welcome, Antoine.
Thank you.
So I think we can sort of do the introductions right now. And to start with, I think I just wanted to say that you have an impressive track record, both from in terms of domain knowledge and working in the field for quite a few years in the energy sector, as well as back that with participation in institutions like MIT and École Polytechnique. So can you share with us what attracted you to the energy sector, and maybe what still attracts you to the energy sector, and how did you transition from working very deeply in, starting from engineering all the way up to venture capital today?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for hosting me for this event today. It's interesting question because I only came to venture capital a few years ago, and I did all my career in upstream oil and gas. And why I did it is because I wanted to travel and I wanted to work on very challenging technical projects. And there is nothing like taking a helicopter and landing in the middle of nowhere on a platform. It looks like a Star Wars movie, and you realize this only when you work in this industry. So I actually started in very kind of dirty projects with which today are considered pretty high emission projects in Canada. And I don't know, maybe at some point I thought I need to be proud in front of my kids. So I went to the VC universe, and in total our VC activity is completely dedicated to energy transition. So I really wanted to pursue in energy, but to investigate something new and not as emissive as the traditional oil and gas.
Okay, that's a very good goal that's driven you here, I think. And Total Carbon Neutrality Ventures already has quite a portfolio, and you have a very wide range of focus. I mean, from bioplastics to distributed energy to AI applications. Could you give our viewers a bit of an introduction to the Total Carbon Neutrality Ventures?
Yeah. So our team has been created 10 years ago, and from the day one, the goal and our mission was really to explore the energy transition and to invest in startups which are pushing the boundaries. And at the time, it was a time back in 2008 or so, oil price was going really high, where people were really, looking at alternatives. And for a big group, shifting gear and moving the big ship into a new direction is it's pretty risky and it's a pretty big endeavor. So we were a kind of a scout. So we invested in various sectors, I must say, from biofuels to energy storage, renewables, smart energy management, and more recently mobility. Um, so this is really the path of our team. And a few months ago, as the group is gearing up in its roadmap to a clean energy future, we changed name to from Total Energy Ventures to Total Carbon Neutrality Ventures, because it looks like now the group itself is really engaged in low carbon energy. So if we want to stay ahead of the group and still be the scouts of the group, we really need to look even further at technologies and business models enabling really carbon neutral energy. So that's what we've done, and that puts even more challenge and spice on what we're doing.
Okay, that's very good. And then in terms of a more general strategy of Total Carbon Neutrality Ventures, so what sort of commitment do you have for the venture arm? What stages of companies are you looking at, as well as is there any geographic limitations? and something like what's the ticket size that you write, and whether you invest, startups only or also to other investors or angel networks.
Yeah, so broadly speaking, we invest of Total's balance sheets, and we have around 400 million euro allocated to us over a period of 5 years, and about half of that is already committed in
Okay.
about 35 companies, and we also invest in funds as well. So in terms of our focus and perimeter, everything related to energy transition, circular economy, biofuels, and all that is of interest. In terms of maturity, we've had different periods, so we are pretty stage flexible in a sense.
Okay.
We can invest in major company already with few million of revenue, and also keep some room for investing in really early stage disruptive companies. So we try not to limit ourselves too much on the maturity. In terms of the size of tickets, I would say it's ranging between 500,000 and 5 million typically, without counting reinvestments. And we tend to view ourselves as a co or follower or a co-lead. We just want to come in with whatever strengths we have, and to syndicate with other investors. So uh, we might go in invest in companies that are raising a lot more than our ticket size. That can happen.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that must be a lot of work, because you must get a lot of inbound interest from all over the place. Yeah.
Yes, yes, we've got quite a few hundred inbounds every year, and what's really good is that we can network with companies through either our own networks or also through the company's network. So it can be pretty wide and varied.
Okay. Um, so going into investments, each investor has their own way of looking at companies, and the important aspects that they try to find in there or give priority to. So what are sort of the main things you look at when you consider companies for investment?
Um, so the first thing, maybe I didn't mention, the objectives of our team is really twofold, like many corporate venture capital arms. One is financial, and the other one is more strategic. So as many, we are expected to turn a profit. So we will clearly have, when we look at a company, we clearly have what looks at how attractive that company can be in terms of growth and valuation increase and exit, and so forth. And the other half of our brain will look at how interesting it is, how much value can Total bring to that company, how much that company bring to Total. So how relevant it is for Total business in the future. So, and that side of things it's another side criteria, and it's the subtlety of our job is really to to mesh those two objectives in something consistent. So when we will talk to a company, we'll typically look at the both angles, and they have to be. It's not like one or the other. We need to have both met at a certain satisfying level. And having said that, the job itself is always a little bit subjective. So it's tough to know what we will be looking for. Sometimes, we have a pretty nice feel about certain companies because a certain recipe between, I don't know, the team, the value proposition, the market size. So um, it looks like when we see it, we recognize it. Sometimes it's tough to articulate it, but and it's also a good feel between the company, the startup, and Total as well. Uh, we want to invest in a company where we can expect in maybe a couple of years to have a certain partnership or business between the two companies. If we don't feel that the startup is somehow on the same glide path as the group, even if the group today is not interested, but if we still want to feel that there could be a possibility 2 years down the line that the startup could be actually very interesting for the group. So we try to see this as well as a criteria because VC is competitive. If we invest in companies and we don't bring value or we don't benefit from this big firepower that we can have in Total, that's too bad. That's an opportunity that maybe we could have invested in another company in which Total could have added value. So we try to keep our shots for those companies.
Okay, thanks for this. So since you already touched upon this firepower, can you try to sort of put it in more context? What is this added value and firepower that you usually bring, or what entrepreneurs usually look for when partnering with Total?
Well, there are a couple of angles that can be of interest to a company. If you look at early stage startups, the name of a big brand name of company like Total is kind of attractive because it gives those companies a certain recognition for customers. So even though we don't really interact, that effect can be pretty useful for early stage companies like pre-revenue seed stage investments. Then for more mature stage companies, two things can happen. One thing is really the industrial skill set of Total. It can be useful for, let's say, building a big pilot and pursuing an R&D development on the side product, maybe not the core product of the company, maybe a side business, one of the two major focus of the company. And Total can help develop projects and fund pilots. So that's one big angle that can be useful. And the other side is more the customer facing side. We have in Total our downstream activities and our services. We have like thousands of fuel stations. For example, in Africa, a lot of companies are interested to work with us because we have a distribution network in almost all African countries except one. So all these, electricity customers, fuel card customers, we have millions of customers each time. So there is for companies interested to partner with us on the customer-facing side, B2C universe, it can be pretty useful. But at the same time, I always want to tell the portfolio company that we cannot promise anything. I mean, we are just a small team in a big company, and we are kind of a sparring partner. We can bounce off ideas, we can open doors. Hopefully, we can generate business, but it cannot be guaranteed. I mean, it's otherwise we would wait too much before we would be making investments. If we had to get approval from too many people in the company, we would lose our agility. So we prefer to under promise and over deliver, and than the opposites, which can happen in the CVC world. And we are perfectly aware of that. So yeah, about over half of our startups really have business with the group, which we are happy with because considering the variety of sectors we are in, sometimes we invest in companies which are a little bit too far on the edge to expect Total to partner with them too soon. But
okay, so this is actually quite the arsenal you have in terms of course, first credibility, then a lot of infrastructure and a large customer base that startups can already start working with. So, but in the context of quite a few new funds emerging each year, and sustainability angle becoming more mandatory rather than optional, what would you say is the USP for the entrepreneurs partnering with Total Energy Ventures?
Yeah, clearly, I mean, we see two trends. First, the ESG trend, and also we see in the VC world the value add part of the USP of those funds is becoming greater. I mean, we see funds which are setting up special teams with business developers. So actually, we've done the same. We have a business developer in our team. So I would say in energy, partnering or having at your table an investor that is a big industrial companies it's a door. It's a big door open to a lot of things which you don't see too much in the VC ecosystem. Discussing how to set up a pilot project, how to get other strategic partners involved. When we are at the table, a lot of incoming investors will come to us to ask us what we think about the startup. So if the startup is in a very technical domain, we are, I guess, maybe, yeah, I don't know, but it seems like we are a bit of a reassuring partner on the table. One other thing which differentiates us from others, we tend to keep a low profile in the cap table, like 5-10% max.
Mm-hmm.
And we tend to only request advisory role or observer seat at the board. So we just want to leave the managers and financial VCs or any investors lead the company, and just we are just there to provide advice, just to make things clear. We don't want to be messing up with the management of the company. We don't want anybody to suspect we have a hidden agenda or anything like this. We are just here to help, and this way, I think maybe some founders will find it's also interesting.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that's quite a good proposition when you give a lot of benefits and more advice rather than control, which is usually the case in the sector, right? So maybe you could give us a sneak preview. So what is the company that you're very excited about at the moment and looking at closely, and probably might even we hear some news down the road?
Well, I mean, it's tough to choose. It's like a kid in a toy store. Um, there, what I'm happy is that a few years ago we started investing in the area of smart energy software companies. And at the time, it was really the beginning of all this era of how to manage fully distributed solar system, wind and batteries. And I'm kind of happy because the company we picked, and some of them I was not there at the time, but the team itself, we pick companies that have really been growing and become like really top tier one companies in the space, like Autogrid or STEM. And
Mm-hmm.
those companies, they are actually delivering what everybody was dreaming about a few years ago. And we start seeing, now it's a reality. It's not just a science project anymore. And it's quite, you know, exciting to see those companies really come of age and be useful. And what is even more exciting is it's just the beginning still. I mean, it's I think the future is ahead of us, and it's quite interesting to see like energy becoming a bit more digital, where optimization and software is playing a greater role. This is something that was completely new 5 years ago. Now it's starting to become reality, and I think it's gonna even be even bigger in 5-10 years. I mean, electric vehicles will come, and it's gonna blow everything. I think it's gonna be interesting to see what those companies evolving. And another topic, I was talking about software, but another company I'm really excited about is Sunfire, for example. It's been in our portfolio for a few years. Uh, it's kind of hardware, hydrogen equipment, not necessarily the one kind of thing that would excite a VC.
Mm-hmm.
But these days, it's the number of announcements around hydrogen strategy roadmaps in Germany, in many European countries. This is just booming at the moment. And we have this company sitting there, patiently developing their technology for a few years. And when you see all these plans and billions of euros that are announced everywhere, I can already see those billions of euros channeled to that company in the future. And that makes me pretty excited.
Oh, yes, definitely. I mean, to your previous point, of course, I think this is like the prime time for these software companies as the distributed energy sources are just beginning to boom, and you need to find ways to better manage the grid, right?
Yeah,
From the examples that you mentioned, and definitely it's getting, I think, harder not to hear about hydrogen these days.
yeah,
Hopefully, this new wave of these announcements is the one that finally breaks through and we make it viable, right,
yeah,
for the market. I mean, everyone, sure, Europe has a lot of plans, but I think it's across the whole globe with the US and specifically the Asian region working on those from automakers to industrials, right?
yeah. No, it's
So yeah, I guess this is as good as time as any to talk about these short-term trends, right? So is this one of the few key themes that you see trending over the next 2 to 3 years?
yeah. I think all I view the energy transition as launching or training a race driver. You don't put the race driver on the Formula One racetrack right away. You need to groom those things. And you look at the energy transition, we started with cheap solar and you had this period of incubation with subsidies, and now it's getting out of the subsidies. And then we went to the second phase, electric vehicles. We're in the and out of the subsidy era, and it's gonna grow exponentially. And I see the third phase coming now, which is decarbonizing industry, and
Mm-hmm.
we are going to be in the grooming phase with subsidy but there is so much pressure on big companies like us, and I can see from the inside
Yeah.
shareholders and governments demanding action, and it's rightly slow because 2050 in the industry, if you want to be carbon neutral by 2050, it's tomorrow. You need to invest now to do the pilots, to do the first plants, and if you want to really have significant capacity for low carbon energy 2050, you need to start yesterday. So and we see this period coming up with green hydrogen, blue hydrogen, maybe with carbon and a lot of exciting projects that are coming up. Uh, and I guess probably with a lot of public support in the beginning, but still we can still kick off some pretty decent startups. And it's also exciting for a group like Total because you might say, okay, the first phase of energy transition, if it was about putting solar panels next to each other with nice feed-in tariff, technically maybe that was not that complex. But if you're looking at a little bit more complex hydrogen projects, or how to make green steel, how to reduce emission in a refinery, stuff like that, you're back to complex projects, which big oil and gas companies like us historically are pretty good at. So that's a trend which is exciting both on the VC side and also for the group.
Okay. So smart energy, hydrogen, especially green and blue hydrogen, and then carbon neutrality are the topics that you think
Yeah,
are the main focus areas that everyone should be
yeah, and
tracking
we
right now.
yeah, and we should not overlook all the things we looked at a few years ago, like smart energy. Maybe the startups are already there, maybe more mature now. But that's really when now things are going to pay off in terms of value proposition. Because when you have a little bit of renewables in the grid, not so many EVs, you don't have so many constraints to deal with.
True.
And if prices are regulated for solar production, it's kind of a no-brainer. But
Hmm.
that's in the next 5-10 years, you'll see more EVs, bottlenecks on the low voltage grids, uh, a lot more maybe curtailments,
Hmm.
no more subsidies or feed-in tariff, or even no more tariff complements. So that's when really we'll need those software bits that we invested a few years ago. So I'm sure there will be other startups also in this field, just because the need will be pretty big.
Okay. So since our main topic is the sustainable energy transition today, could you give maybe a few more examples, maybe from the portfolio or other tech companies that Total is partnering with, working in the space,
Yeah.
that you think
So
notable?
I didn't mention batteries, but
Mm-hmm.
clearly, I mean, Total is one of the companies in the energy space which has acquired a company doing batteries. Actually, it's a French company called SAPS, which is now Total affiliate. And we have the ambition to play in a big role in the electric mobility from the battery making standpoint. So as a VC for Total, we look at battery technology as well. So and here it's the beginning of a big wave. You have big companies doing battery sales, but around that you have quite a lot of things happening from new generations of lithium-ion batteries. Like we have an investment in ionic materials, for example,
Mm-hmm.
or exciting battery management systems. Like we have invested in an early stage company in France called Autonome. These things are very exciting as well. And for us, because we have part of the group a technology developer, like a product maker, we have also an angle looking at the startups that we look at a little bit more the technology and the deep tech than what we would do if we didn't have this kind of manufacturing in the group. So that's one thing. The other area which is very interesting for us is plastic recycling. We have not yet invested. There are a few things going on, so I cannot. It could be announced pretty soon.
Okay.
But the group is shifting gear also in selling polymers with increasing content of recycled polymers inside. So it's a little bit a new era for a group which used to source raw materials from our refineries. Now we need to source which have had their life of their own in small quantities everywhere, and that's kind of a new paradigm for a polymer maker. So and the startups universe is growing also very fast on that front. So it's also something very interesting for us just to close the loop on materials. Uh, Something quite new for us.
Okay. That's very interesting, and I think there's quite a lot to be done there with a few companies. I think everyone has seen progressing there.
Mm.
So, um, also considering short-term events and maybe even shocks. So, in the context of the climate discussion, um, how do you think COVID-19 and the lockdown, as well as the hit to the oil prices, has affected this dialogue? Is it more positive or on the negative side?
Um, well, I think it's a very good question. I think we have a lot of debate in the company about this anyway, with a lot of people. On the one hand, you cannot deny there is a ton of money that is thrown out attached to environmental or sustainability conditions.
Definitely.
And so that money is going to make babies. It's going to work its way through the most sustainable companies. So that's really positive. The oil price, the fact it went down pretty abruptly, it's a signal to investors in fossil industries that they need to be very careful. So I guess that's going to dry up a little bit the investment in fossil energy and accelerate
Yep.
the big shift from fossil energy to clean energy. And all of a sudden, the clean energy projects are not going to look so bad, even financially, compared to investing in the traditional fossil-based energy. So I think that's going to accelerate.
Okay.
On the other side, our governments are getting a lot of debt, and we have to recognize that a lot of these clean technologies are still not on par in terms of cost compared to pretty cheap oil. So uh, we have to recognize that if we want to transition, there will be efforts from the society in general to subsidize one way or another these new technologies until the point that the volumes are big enough so they can really reduce costs. And that we should keep in mind that it's not evident. I mean, you have extreme cases, like for example, aviation, switching planes to synthetic fuels based on electricity, then hydrogen, and then whatever synthetic fuels you can do. It costs a fortune. Making a hydrogen plane might be cheaper per megajoule of energy on fuel, but you need to restart a plane from scratch, and it might take decades to do a plane on hydrogen. Maybe not with pretty good entrepreneurs, but it could still be. Even Elon Musk, I think, it would take
On the
maybe 5 or
safety
10
alone.
years.
Yeah.
So it's a big challenge. So I think we need to recognize it's gonna take a lot of support to accelerate. But I think it's a trigger. It's only gonna accelerate this.
Okay, so since you sort of mentioned how the solar and the green energy subsidies and feed-in tariffs are sort of going away, and software startups are becoming more relevant, and then also taking into context that this, for example, European Green Deals are subsidizing these tech startups. Do you think this will have more of a positive or or also some kind of a negative effect on them in terms of the development cycle of these technologies, since they might be, for example, well funded and not in a rush to deliver?
Well, it's true that in general, a lot of companies these days are getting loans, uh, even if they are not in pretty good shape. And you'd say too much money, all the bad apples would survive longer than what they would have survived with all this money. And that has been an issue a little bit in France, notably, where there was a lot of public support for early stage companies, not so much to support later stage companies. So it's a bit of a two-edged sword. You have, on one hand, it's good to support early stage innovation, but if you cannot support them all the way through commercialization, then you have a lot of people wasting their time. If you look at really the on the bad way. So hopefully, because now we have a much better ecosystem in Europe. Now we have support for early stage startups. We have more and more late stage funds. The big companies are really forced to change and do things, even venture in new technology. I mean, taking the example of plastic recycling, the posture of big groups a few years ago was, oh, those chemical recycling technologies super touchy. Let's not do that. Now they have no choice, so they are investigating risky technology. So the big groups are going to fund risky pilots. So if you do all this, I think it's gonna still be positive. With the risk that maybe a few companies would have been supported maybe a little bit longer, but overall I think it's good. It grows entrepreneurs as well, so it's quite positive.
Okay, thank you. So considering all these startups funded or looking for funding or partnerships to test their technology, what's the go-to method to reach you? Is it social media, email, phone, events?
Yeah, we have like a website with total carbon neutrality ventures with contact email, so pretty straight answer. After that, we have LinkedIn, we have email. We are generally present at several conferences, and if entrepreneurs know anybody from branches of Total and they want to discuss their projects, we generally get the word through our colleagues, so that can work as well.
Okay, and when is the best time for people and entrepreneurs to reach out? Is it before they start fundraising or already in the process and when they already have some capital committed?
Well, I think it's all, the sooner, always the better. And the good thing with company like us, even if the company or the entrepreneur is not raising money, even if even if we are not interested, it doesn't cost not anything for us to introduce the entrepreneurs to anybody in the group that could be interested. And it happens a lot. I mean, for every investment we make, we probably have like 50 introductions between entrepreneurs and our business units. Because a lot of cases, there is still interest to pursue a discussion for any kind of relationship on the side. So I think it's always a good time, and we also like to follow the companies over time. Things can take time in the industry sector. So also we want to make sure we invest at the right moment. So it's good to follow the entrepreneurs through their journey.
Okay. And what sort of advice would you give from all these years, working in the energy VC space to the founders? What's sort of the core that they should consider when building a
I'm not
sustainable
sure.
energy tech startup?
Honestly, I'm not sure I'm in a position to give advice because I would just say hats off to entrepreneurs in this space.
Okay.
I think it's just a phenomenal job that they are doing. Honestly, I did a small company myself, but when I see the kind of commitments those guys do, or men or women, it's just crazy. I mean, it's the level of risk that they take, and so I'm just here. We are just here to help them with our 2 cents of advice when we can, and other than that. I would just say I'm impressed a lot of the time.
Okay. And then to wrap the section up, maybe a couple of quick questions regarding the oil and gas companies and corporates in general in VC. So hydrogen or batteries, which do you think will be more important for the sustainable energy transition from a Total perspective?
Sorry, hydrogen or what?
Or batteries?
Ah, uh, honestly, I think batteries are on track to solve the ground transportation issue. Hydrogen, I think it's gonna be as important, but maybe 5, 10 years later. And it's gonna be for different use cases, more for industry and perhaps for aviation and marine fuels. So I'd say difficult to say. I think batteries would be number one for a few years before hydrogen really takes that role.
Okay. And then in terms of sort of a CVC perspective, do you think you're able to move as fast or faster than pure VC funds in the space?
Well, I would not say we are faster. To be honest,
Okay.
what we try to do is to be as agile as possible. We have pretty fast process, I must say, compared to others, but it's because we don't need sponsorship formally from our business units, which helps.
Okay. And then what sort of addition to the energy ecosystem would you like to see in terms of like open data, anything, more VCs, more corporate VCs, more events, a better network?
Mm, um, I like to see the big companies more involved, but not just to pay a little bit of R&D, but really to commit and to buy big stuff. To write checks of several $1 million for startups. It's something that's not the culture is not always there to do. If we can get these big corporates to write big checks, that changed a lot because no matter how much VCs you can add, I mean, at the end of the day, a startup, they need customers before they need anything else. And in the industry energy, a lot of these customers are big corporates.
Yep.
If we can get these big corporates to play the game and really take some risk and pay some pretty decent checks to startups, that would be good.
Yeah, to actually accelerate
Yeah, so after that could be how to organize this, conferences and things like that are always useful. If those things can translate into, big orders, that's great.
Fantastic. I think this is it for our session today. So thank you so much for joining us, Antoine, and to all the viewers looking at our live feed. You will be able to find the recording on our website as well. Send us any questions and to Anton as well through our Energy Tech Network and get in touch to discuss any potential partnership or investment opportunity that you might have.
Yeah.
And we'll see you more in more interviews.
Yeah, thank you a lot, and I hope to continue discussion on virtual one-to-ones. Thank you very much.